business experiences for companies like that are trying to get their businesses together and do like throw a party and they can't get together.
Welcome to That Entrepreneur Life, a podcast about entrepreneurship that takes you from idea to launch and beyond. Each week, your hosts, Andrew Lees and Clint McPherson, discuss different business topics aimed at adding value to any entrepreneur's journey.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Entrepreneur Life. I'm Andrew Lees, and I got my co-host Clint McPherson here today. How's it going today, man?
It's going good, man. It's just another episode. We get to kick off and share the experience together and get to share, another special guest with our audience. We got a very special guest on the show today, guys. He's the founder of an energy bar business called Rickaroons, a virtual experience-based platform called Mkrday, and a podcast called Small Biz Gone Viral that keeps it real about what it's like to keep a business afloat in the midst of a global pandemic. Before I introduce our special guest today, I want to remind you to subscribe to our podcast and to our mailing list or our website so that you don't miss out on all the free resources we have to help you start and grow your business. With that said, I'd like to welcome our special guest, Grant LeBeau, to the show. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well. Clint and Andrew, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Grant. Yeah, we really appreciate having you on here, man. We're very excited. I want to throw one more plug out there in addition to what Clint was talking about. In addition to subscribing to our podcast, if you're a loyal subscriber and you're already listening to the show, the best way you can support it is by sharing. So if you could share it with your friends and family, that would mean everything to us. So awesome. On with the show.
Yeah. So Grant, man, I appreciate you joining us today, hopping on with us. But can you take us back and our audience back to when your entrepreneurial journey started and what it is about entrepreneurship specifically that gets you fired up every day, brother?
Oh, yeah. So let's see. My dad and I started Rickaroons. So his name's Rick. The energy bar is kind of macaroon-ish. So Rick plus macaroon, Rickaroons. Nice. We started in his kitchen back in 2013, selling our first Rickaroon at a local farmer's market on Father's Day. It wasn't like, yes, it wasn't like we put our minds together and said, hey, we want to start a business because we're passionate about entrepreneurship. It felt like we almost were the frogs in the pot, basically. Like we started out as a side gig, baking, one day before the farmer's market and then selling for a few hours. And then things kind of just kept on progressing to be hotter and hotter and more full-time till eventually a couple of years in, we switched to being full-time. It seems almost serendipitous because I remember in college knowing that I was going to do like a business econ entrepreneurship major, not because I had any specific idea in mind, but just because I had seen growing up, I'd seen my dad work and he was always self-employed, and the lifestyle that went along with it seemed enviable enough to where I was like, yeah, I want to do that at some point. But like I said, it wasn't that we had this big like epiphany that, hey, we need to start this company or we need to work together. It really kind of was quite serendipitous, I think.
That's cool. And that's great that, I think a lot of times we learn from our parents and what they do. And I think a lot of people learn that they don't want to do what their parents did. So that's
what
really
I was thinking too.
Yeah. And honestly, like entrepreneurship and the lifestyle, the flexibility, it's not easy, far from that, but the flexibility in it is definitely something I'd love to, have my son one day, decades from now, be like, man, I want to do that. Like, I love how, I hope he sees what I do and understands how much I love it and wants to, be like that. Clint, I know you've talked about your son's kind of getting the itch for entrepreneurship already. So it's really, I think that's a really cool legacy to leave your kids.
Yeah. 100%. Clint, how old are your kids?
I got an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Wow. Yeah. Sorry. So I'm playing catch up with you guys. Yeah. So I have a 2-month-old daughter at home. And
Awesome.
as I kind of look forward to the next thing, obviously childcare is just becoming a thing for us. My wife's been on maternity leave. I've been working from home, so, and pretty minimally. So it's been great. Like, but we have to get back to the real world here where we have to actually, work,
make money.
Yeah. But I definitely would love to be able to replicate what my dad did, because my memories of growing up with him are that basically he would just kind of form his work schedule around my needs, basically. So cool. Yeah, I mean, it was just days with him where like just pack up the car with a football and basketball and a bucket of baseballs and like just go to the fields and go to the courts, like play whatever sport. And basically it was just time with he and I to bond. And I would love to have that with my daughter, never miss a whatever game she's playing, soccer game, never miss it. That's kind of parent I want to be. And I feel like entrepreneurship can afford that. My wife and I have discussed, like, do I wake up at 5 and do a couple hours before she goes to work and then I do a couple hours later? Like, that kind of flexibility is, I think, daunting for some people, and appealing for some crazy people who like us, I guess.
100%. Yeah, I mean, you've got to have that ambition. You've got to have that ability to be self-starting. A lot of people I talk to say, "Oh, you work from home. There's no way I could do that. I'd watch Netflix all day." And I'm like, well, you wouldn't for long, for two reasons. One scenario is you'd watch Netflix and you wouldn't make any money, and you'd go broke and have to go get a job. Or you would be ambitious enough to be like, a couple of days into watching Netflix, being like, I should probably get to work here. I'm not going to be able to pay the bills and just watch TV all day. So one of those two scenarios would force you to not do that. Yeah.
I think it's ambition is one side of that, and then I think just actively seeking out that kind of lifestyle, I guess, is part of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt.
Yeah, it's so cool. Well, you and I talked a few months ago. I actually can't remember how many months ago. It seems like a while, but it probably wasn't quite as long as I remember. But we talked on your show, Small Biz Gone Viral, which I highly recommend everybody go check out. Really cool show. And you and I talked on season 1, episode 37. So you can check that out too. And we talked about how we've managed to both keep our businesses going during the pandemic. And we talked about my businesses. We talked about yours, Rickaroons, and what you were starting to work on with Mkrday. Are there any new developments with Rickaroons, and what's happening with Mkrday, and anything else you got going on?
Sure. Yeah. It's a little bit of a mouthful. I know. When I was at a wedding this last weekend, and when people are like, "So what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh boy, how much time do you have?" Yeah.
Everything, all the things.
All the things. Yeah.
That's entrepreneurship right there. You figure out what works, do a couple things, figure out what works, then really focus in on what makes it.
Yeah. Well, what works and what doesn't work. So Rickaroons, unfortunately, has been hit pretty hard by the pandemic. We did a fair amount of our business with Costco road shows, where that's where you show up on like Monday morning. You're there open till close for 4 to 7 days. And then you pack up all your stuff and leave. So you're only selling when you are physically there. So Costco is very conservative. So they scrapped those very early in March of 2020. Mm-hmm. You'll remember that most of the country stopped or kind of shut down mid to late March. They were Costco was out in front of that. Mm-hmm. So I expect them to be kind of the last to restart those.
And they have not restarted that program.
No, they have definitely not restarted them, especially now with Delta and now the Lambda variant and just seemingly no end in sight. Yeah. It would, and I say that like a bit tongue in cheek. I hope there's an end in sight here
for everybody.
It just seems farther than obviously we would than everyone would like, just as on a human level. Yeah. And then of course specifically since on this show we're talking about my business. I don't see that coming back probably until probably not till 2022 at a bare minimum.
Right. So definitely not something you can rely on, kind of hold your breath that it comes back and then you can regain that revenue. Because I remember you were talking about that being a pretty significant chunk of revenue for you guys.
Yeah.
Like very significant.
It was.
Yeah.
And so that flatlined. We were doing a decent amount and we saw it as a growth segment, working with offices. So think of like your Silicon Valley providing snacks. That was a pretty decent. That wasn't decent. That was a phenomenal group of business because you were selling to. So we're like kind of a premium-ish energy bar. We're the 𝗂𝗵𝗶𝘀 special. We're organic, gluten-free, vegan, paleo, no fillers, no cheap grains. So because of that, the price point's a little bit higher. So when we would work with a company like we were on the LinkedIn campus. The way that works is you basically have one buyer go, send me a box of samples, give it to 5 or 10 people. They like them. Okay, great. We'll take a pallet. Right. And there's really it's really, really difficult to replicate that in just about any other situation. And a pallet is like 10,000 bars. So, as you would imagine, and as anyone who's kind of been paying just a modest amount of attention knows that this Silicon Valley especially has been working from home, and as have a lot of offices in New York and LA and kind of the places that tend to have the buying power to acquire the quantity at the price point that we want. Yeah. And so that's also been pretty much eliminated. I know a lot of our distributors who work in that industry had thought they had struck gold in the 10 years prior to the pandemic. Yeah. But they're certainly struggling as well. So basically there are some industries that are still pretty good ways away from coming back. So yeah, it's been a struggle for sure. One of the ways that we have kind of adapted or at least are planning to adapt is by doing more private labeling. And so that's kind of maybe thinking and exploring working with other companies who have more of an established graft in some specific industry and are looking to add a line of energy bars to their offering and maybe don't have the expertise and want to do something a little bit more kind of not plug and play necessarily, but would work with us to make something happen for them.
Right. Yeah. So they kind of have the distribution channels set up, exactly. but they need a great product. You've got a great product. You need the distribution channels so that you can kind of work with them to get revenue flowing.
Right. So yeah,
that's cool.
That's the goal. And then I think you asked about Mkrday as well.
Yeah.
So Mkrday was kind of a side project, I guess. It's kind of hard to know where one side project ends and another begins, or which one's the full one, because really they all kind of combine to make the full-time thing. But so I started a company called Mkrday, which is Mkrday, and I started that probably at the beginning of 2021. I could kind of see the writing on the wall for Rickaroons that things were going to be tough for a little bit. So I was looking for other ways to kind of capitalize on the relationships that I already had, and then also as a way to design a business from scratch to basically to alleviate the big pain points that I have with Rickaroons. Because you remember that at Rickaroons, we basically started, I kind of like stumbled into it, right? I think we started it when I was like 24, maybe 20, right. Yeah, 20, 25, no real entrepreneurial experience. So that kind of evolved naturally. And some of the things that so with Mkrday, I guess I should explain what it is. So we create remote group experiences led by small business owners. So if you had, instead of whining and dining your clients because pandemic, you maybe want to entertain a group of 10 or 15 people who are spread out around the country who normally you would have seen, during your sales stops in those cities or whatever, or conventions or something. So in lieu of that, you might want to have like a 2-hour conference, and you want to have something sort of fun to bring everybody together, kind of do a shared experience. So we do experiences that are between 30 and 90 minutes, and we send, and by we, I mean the small businesses that I partner with, will send a box ahead of time. That box will have a bunch of things that will allow you to fully experience that company's products. So, for example, we have a chocolate tasting, and the owner of it, who's this amazing woman, will go through it. It's a husband and wife company, and they're doing great. Their chocolate's incredible, and they do four single source dark chocolates from 4 different countries. And so they'll go through the tasting, and okay, now you're tasting the Brazil, now you're tasting the Madagascar, now you're tasting that's where the cacao is from. Okay. So she gives you kind of sort of like a quick masterclass on chocolate, and then you finish by getting your hands dirty and hand rolling your own truffles. So we have a bunch of classes around kombucha and wine and coffee. And kind of what makes us different is that all of our experiences are always led by the small business owners themselves. So never by a salesperson or an employee. And basically I created that because I'm as an extrovert trapped in a pandemic, this allowed me to reach out to a bunch of and stay in contact with a bunch of small business owners, which similar to the podcast. And it kind of ties into the podcast too, because I was hearing that my pandemic experience was happening all over, right, to all sorts of other small businesses. And so in creating Mkrday, kind of building the business model, what I was trying to do is basically be immediately cash flow positive, hold no inventory, and make it a way that it would be, once we kind of established what the curriculum of the class would be, make it relatively plug and play for those small businesses, so that what I tell them is I want them to have this sudden urge to go high five someone every time I call, because it's always with good news.
Yeah.
Because, hey, we're gonna charge we're gonna make sure that the small businesses are paid a fair value. Basically, is kind of is really what we're going for, because I think so often people, and all the small businesses that I work with can relate to this, basically being reached out to and be like, hey, can you give us 500 or 1,000, or I've been asked for 50,000 bars before for free in exchange of exposure. Right.
Right. For like gift boxes, or
for gift boxes. Yeah,
man, those gift box companies are ruthless. Yeah.
I mean, hey, we and I've even been, they've had the gall to say, hey, we'll waive the fee and allow you to send us 50,000 bars for free so that you can get put in front of 50,000 people. I'm like, I just would never in a million years would I pay to be put in front of 50,000 random people.
Yeah. And I mean, you have to, at least with your product, it's with the Rickaroons, it's something that people would, if they like it, they continue to buy it, right? But
when you're putting in a box with 9 other products, people people just want free shit. Paying for that box. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they paid $10, $15, whatever, and those companies are they're making a killing because they're getting everything for free or for absolutely dirt cheap.
Yep. And it's like, listen, we're not a Nestle company, we're not a Nabisco company, we're not a General Mills company, like
where you don't care where your advertising budget goes.
Right.
You're like, spend some money, spend a
few
million bucks
we're a small business. It's a premium product. The cost of each cost of goods is high. So anyways, all the small businesses who I work with, they can all relate to that. And so the goal, and I think we're doing a decent job of it, is basically to truly be partners as we've created these packages for bigger companies who kind of have the budgets for events like this.
I mean, that's unique in itself, Grant. I mean, I really think, I know you said, I'll mention it a little bit before we started recording, that you wish you would have thought of this idea about 1.5 years ago, right?
Well, right.
But at the end of the day too, man, like we even talked about it, with the Delta variant and all this stuff coming. I mean, brother, these experiences are still going to be, I really think, pivoting like you did. and going in this direction was one, the right move. Shows that you do have that entrepreneurial spirit to make a decision and continue to move when something else is not going your way. But at the end of the day, man, I really think it's unique in what you've done. I think we've had somebody on our show before that does like business experiences for companies like that are trying to get their businesses together and do like throw a party and they can't get together. And then they have that experience where they like send them swag and, you know, get these funny glasses and put them on. And so like when they're on the virtual event, they feel like they're part of it. But I mean, even what you're doing with Mkrday, man, it sounds like something that anybody can get excited about, because again, it's one of those things. You have the small business owners that are actually doing it. The people are actually getting their hands on something, that they are taste testing something that like, and they're getting to learn about it. And I think that's priceless in itself, because doing that virtually, I mean, bro, you can do that. Like, I don't think there's an end to that, you know, because virtual is the future. Virtual is the now. And I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. So kudos to you for that, brother.
Yeah. Thank you. It's like I said, it definitely allows me to stay connected to other small businesses out there, which is kind of my, I guess my favorite thing about Rickaroons, I guess, is working with other small businesses when that gets to happen. It's not as often as I would like. And you know, part of the reason why I started the podcast was, again, to kind of meet those extrovert needs in a pandemic where meeting new people is basically frowned upon. So the Mkrday project has been fun. It's strategically, I guess, it's somewhat of a hedge against a continued pandemic, because if Rickaroons is hurting because in-person things aren't allowed, then it probably means that there will continue to be a big market for Mkrday to continue to thrive.
Right.
You're right. As people start to go back in person, then theoretically Rickaroons would come back up. Mkrday might decline a little bit, but that's okay, because it's really something that can grow or shrink as needed, and adapt pretty easily without really much overhead at all.
Exactly. Without any inventory, you can scale it up, you can scale it down. If it just, blew up through the roof tomorrow, that's a good problem to have, right? You just hire the necessary resources that you need to keep it going.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I love that. And then obviously Rickaroons is a little bit more, there's more to it. There's more logistically that you have to consider. But if they started doing trunk shows again at Costco, might be, you might jump on that because that could be some great revenue. So that's real. I think a really great balance, and two totally different products and services that it's good if you can, as long as you are able to focus on what you need to do for each thing. I think it's good to have a couple things going and kind of hedge your bets.
Yeah. Especially as the, I guess we're here to talk about the entrepreneurial life, right? I mean, if you're the entrepreneur at the head of the company, you're the last person to get paid.
Right.
Yeah.
Or should be.
I guess that's not like a rule across the board, but at least that's the way that we've sort of operated.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So it's daunting, I think, sometimes when you look at business take a plunge. You're like, all right, well, I guess I just won't get paid for a little while.
Yeah.
And that little while might extend.
Longer than you
would
like.
You got to assume that it will, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. I think as an entrepreneur, you got to expect unexpected. But Grant, I mean, you just talked about how you kind of pivoted in a certain way with the decline of Rickaroons. But what are a couple of the most important things you've had to do over the years and over this short period of time as well to pivot your business and refocus your energies and make a larger impact and drive more sales?
There was a lot in that. Can you repeat that question for me?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously with the decline of Rickaroons, right? You had to pivot, and we talked about you pivoting. But what were some of the most important things about that pivot, and how important was it for you to just refocus all of that to make a larger impact on what you're trying to do and help you drive more sales?
Yeah. So I think that with Rickaroons, we have it's a great product, and I like to this day I still think that I think it's unique in all the boxes that it checks. In that, like, how healthy it is and how delicious it is. We say it tastes like we say it tastes like an almond joy that does yoga.
I love that. Your branding, by the way, everybody's got to check out Rickaroons.com, because it's just some of the text in there is really funny. It's just like fun to read. That's my sister.
Yeah. So my sister, awesome. I have one sister who did all of the graphic design, and I have another sister who does basically all of the copy, and then does kind of the not big project graphic design. So that's Stevie. Yeah, she's amazing.
That's cool.
Anyone who meets her will share that sentiment.
Yeah.
So you asked about big pivots, basically, and adjustments. I think that what we have kind of taken a step back and seen is that it's going to be longer than anticipated for the old revenue streams to come back.
Right.
And in order to make it worth it for us, basically, it's well, actually, let me rephrase that. Rather than try to, it took us we were 6.5, 7 years in to Rickaroons when the pandemic happened.
Right.
And it was a very slow growth model that involved a lot of grinding. And I think that we're all in different places in our life now where it didn't really make sense to look forward to the end of the pandemic and then having to try to grind it out all over again.
Right.
And so we're looking basically for a bigger bang for our buck, for how do we be more efficient with our time and energy. And so that's why we've started to move more into that, attempted, and so far we've found one company to work with in that private label model. And that has a ton of potential. I'm just looking down the road. If in a year or two, if we had 3 or 4 bigger private label partners, being the lean company that we are, that would be a pretty good income for everyone involved at Rickaroons.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that really is thinking outside the box, and also kind of checking your ego at the door a little bit too, right? Because you want people to know your product as Rickaroons, but if they're being private labeled, it's the same, getting the same product, getting the same great product that you make, but it might be labeled differently for somebody else. But
right, and it'll be a little bit different too.
Yeah,
it's not the exact same thing. People usually want something that's they want to add their key ingredient or something. But the name is just the last thing to worry about. Like we mentioned, I have that 2-month-old daughter at home. I'm pretty sure she doesn't care if Grandpa Rick's name is on something. Just want her to have what she needs, be able to. I want to be in a place where I can spend as much time as I want with her, and kind of be there as she grows up and develops into the next generation of entrepreneur.
That's 100%. What it's all about. Yeah. Yep. That's it. Yeah. And I think a lot of people do, as a product development engineer, I talk with a lot of people who have this really narrow, mindset about their product and how it needs to be exactly this thing. Right. And they have no wiggle room. They have no flexibility. And even if I come back and say, hey, listen, I think that if you change this, this, and this, it would be a better product. You'd sell more. Or, hey, that feature that you want to add that's going to be an absolute nightmare to develop and manufacture, I don't think is going to have any impact on sales.
Yeah.
People sometimes still are like, nope, gotta just have it this one way. And if you have that mentality, you're almost definitely going to fail. You just have to have that ability to be flexible, to not be emotional, to not let your ego get in the way, all that stuff. You got to really figure out what your goal is. And if your goal is to help your family and set them up for success long term, then the other stuff falls away, and you've got to figure out how to make that happen for them.
Yeah. I think it's rare that someone comes up with an idea that iteration number 1 is going to be, or that version 1 will require no further iteration, no further evolution.
Yeah.
Perfect for the marketplace at any scale right away.
Yep.
We certainly haven't been that way. We've changed all sorts of things. Like at Rickaroons, we've changed the shape, we've changed the packaging, we've changed, the recipes here and there, basically trying to adapt to a way that keeps us authentic and true to ourselves and our origins, while also being viable in the marketplace.
Right.
And that can be like, you have to adapt, of course.
Yeah.
Or I mean, you don't have to, but if you, it sure is a lot easier if you're willing to make those adjustments. And I know, like in the production world, it's every time you take another step in growth, there are new challenges that come along with that, and sometimes require doing things a little bit differently than the way that got you there. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and I think
you can't bake 1 million Rickaroons in a home kitchen. So like very quickly we had to scale from there. Okay. Well, what does that mean? It means there are going to be longer lead times, and now you have more cash flow issues. So how do you adjust to those? Okay. Now you need to produce to scale. Just so many things that go along with that. What's the best shape for that? How do you, even just as far as like adjusting the recipe, right? Like the recipe, you're going to produce, or you're going to bake for less time than you would if you're baking at home, because you're in an industrial kitchen now.
Yeah.
There are like tons of little details that go along with it. But then of course, just trying to make sure that the market as you scale is on board with what your idea, what your concept is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cause that's the most important thing. That's one of the top reasons that businesses fail, is they don't have they're not actually addressing problems or the needs of the market. They think they are, or maybe they're addressing the needs for like a real small niche, and that's cool. But if you have a really small niche and a low price point, you're going to oversaturate and not make a whole lot of money. So you got to make sure that you're really providing value and solving problems for a large enough audience, and you have to make sure that you understand that audience, because I see a lot of people not taking the time to figure that out. They just go full steam ahead. They waste a lot of money and time, and could have been solved by just doing a little research, a little planning in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Grant, what do you think the hardest thing for you has been about being an entrepreneur?
So we talk about flexibility being a big upside, right? The downside, or the trade-off with that, is stability. And so I think that I'm 34, and I'm at a point now where I've started, I see a lot of friends who have had a lot of financial success. I have one friend in particular who worked at a preeminent investment firm on Wall Street, and then went to basically one in private equity, and then now has since moved from New York, but is thriving financially.
It's always the finance guys.
Yeah,
for sure.
They're the ones who are killing it. Everybody else, you're like, it's not necessarily super enviable, but it's the finance guys who are making. They have a job, a job, but they're still just killing it with money. There's a sacrifice in the beginning of that,
right?
Journey,
and so exactly, like, so the guy who I'm thinking of, he worked 100-hour weeks for certainly the first few years, and then 90, and then 80, and then basically holding on to probably 70-hour weeks and that's like in an office building in a suit and tie or something close to it, Monday through Friday or Saturday or Sunday. And travel was tough, and, making a ton of money, but certainly not the flexibility. So I'm here in San Diego, and, that friend comes out, he's like, oh, you have the best life because you can walk down to the beach and go surf, and you can take off time from work anytime you want, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking at him like, well, the grass sure seems green on your side of the fence, my friend.
All right.
And I think that's probably the tough thing, especially through the pandemic. I definitely had some moments of kind of self-pity that I needed to kick myself out of, as I'm looking at like other people who work for those larger companies, or maybe are able to pivot more, or have the war chest to afford those pivots and continuing to pay people Whereas, with Rickaroons, yes, I have all that flexibility, but there's a price. You feel like you're standing on a cliff's edge, I think, a lot of the time. And you have this beautiful view, but you're way closer to falling than if you were kind of in the safety, of your 9 to 5, watching the documentary about that view. Yeah. Right. Yeah. People are always like, oh man, it's so cool to have your own business. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, is it?
Yeah.
It depends on what day or what hour of the day you're talking to me.
Exactly. It's a lot sexier flipping through,
Inc. magazine or
Fortune. Definitely. But if you talk to any of those guys who are in those magazines, like I think Elon Musk said something about entrepreneurship is like staring into an abyss, chewing glass. And like, that's the feeling sometimes, which is just why, he says some ridiculous stuff, but and that would make anyone never, ever want to start a business and never, want to be an entrepreneur. But I sort of take that as it's not always like that. And you ask Elon Musk, would he have rather worked for somebody or started his businesses? Of course he would have rather started his businesses, Right. It's given him, even if he's working all the time in those businesses and he doesn't take too much time for himself personally, that's his choice. He doesn't need to, he could take all the time he wants now because he's, a multi-billionaire, but you don't even have to be a billionaire for it to really make a lot of sense. And the potential is always there for you to make finance type money and more, with more flexibility. And you just can't do that with other jobs. And even in finance, you can make a lot of money, set yourself up, with, like you said, like a war chest, and that gives you a good jumping off point. But there's that potential with entrepreneurship that's just, you can't get anywhere else, even if on some days you are staring into an abyss, chewing glass,
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. I'm not sure I would ever use that analogy.
No,
that seems pretty extreme. A smidge extreme.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can be painful, both financially when something like a pandemic happens or a recession happens. You can see your income go from 6 figures to, I don't know, 3 figures.
Right. You can. No doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can feel kind of alone too. I think it can be like a lonely pursuit.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. Absolutely. The loneliness is real. I think that the downsides are not widely recognized. And I think this is actually why I started my podcast, was because I felt like the world's perception of entrepreneurship, especially via something like Shark Tank and how I built this, people tend to see kind of the glitz and glam of entrepreneurship. And when in reality, I think there are a lot more lonely moments and moments of kind of self-doubt than what is maybe seen and given the limelight, right? You have the podcast, How I Built This. I love it, but it's basically interviewing people at the end who have already hit the game-winning shot.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm interested in people who maybe are like the role players who may or may not be in the NBA next year and are struggling like to fight for survival and just like fighting for that roster spot. Like what's their story, right? Like, cause they never get any love. So that's, the goal with my podcast was to shine a light on like the real world of entrepreneurship, of those real struggles, who are still in the ring, who are still, fighting their way up. Sorry for all these mixed sports analogies.
No, it's good.
100%. I love it. Yeah.
It kind of hits the nail on the head. Yeah. And that's what, Clint and I love the origin stories, but beyond the story is what are people doing who, like, what are they doing to get their business from 4 to 5 to 6 figures or beyond? If we're like, it's kind of difficult to, we talked with the founder of Kayak and Travelocity, and he was really cool guy. It's almost hard to talk with him strategically about how he went how he created $2 billion businesses. When
Dude, what are you having me on this show for? Kayak man.
But I think most of the people who are listening probably they're not like just about to be, they're not trying to figure out how to become billionaires. They're trying to figure out how to get a nice sustainable 6-figure income,
sure,
6-figure revenue,
the lifestyle business, if you will.
Right. Yeah. Or they're trying to take it. They're sort of early days trying to just get to that proof of concept and get to the 6, maybe 7-figure mark, but they're not like thinking about 8, 9, and 10, so because you can't. And like, we talked with one guy on the show who was like, if you look for a mentor and you're at 6 figures, look for a mentor who's at 7. Don't look for a mentor who's at 9, because they
skipping steps.
Exactly. They were at 6 figures so long ago, they don't remember how to get from 6 to 7. All they know is how to get from 8 to 9.
Right.
And they're thinking about how to get to the next
how
jump,
to get to 10. Sure.
Exactly. So I think it's kind of important to talk to everybody at different positions. Really cool to talk to somebody who started $1 billion business to pick their brain. And he talked with the same enthusiasm as if he had just started, because he actually kind of is just starting a consulting coaching kind of business, so he's got that same fire, like he's starting from scratch again. So
but with him too, it was the right place, right time, and getting asked to do something, and then he just rolls with it, and then it turns into the business, and you're just like, what the hell, that that's luck sometimes. But again, putting yourself in the right mindset, the right place, and around the right people. You never know what's going to happen. It's all about networking. It's all about, trying to get around people that, want to take it to the next level. And then kind of cutting out the stuff and all the dead weight that kind of holds you down. So.
Yeah, for sure.
So Grant, man, I believe we could talk to you all day, my man. I've enjoyed this episode, but as we wrap up this episode, if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice, what would it be?
Think twice before becoming an entrepreneur. I think that I think that, and this is, I don't know if it's down or if it kind of, I guess continuing what I was saying about why I started my podcast, I just think that entrepreneurship is a lot harder than people think. And it goes to kind of what Andrew was saying about, and like what he does, I think, full-time on the side of this podcast, as a product engineer, is I think that a lot of people have these ideas about what entrepreneurship is, and maybe don't necessarily do the legwork to make sure that there is that there is a market out there that can support and sustain them in their early years and growth. And just doing that early research to figure out exactly what your niche is going to be and why you are different is really, really important. I wouldn't start another company. And I like with Mkrday, I made sure that there wasn't anyone out there who was doing exactly what we were looking to do.
Right.
And so had there been someone else who was already doing that, even though I think it's a great idea, I wouldn't do that again. I just want to make sure that there's like a market that supports all of the effort that's going to go into it, because there are going to be, we talked about flexibility in entrepreneurship, but that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be those really, really long days. I mean, I've put in plenty of 15-hour days in the office here where I'm here before the sun comes up, and I'm here, long after I should have gone home for dinner. And those are the things that I think generally don't really get recognized.
Right.
Because what people see is small business owner in San Diego, so you just work from home and surf all the time. And it's no, that's not what it's like. So I guess I know this is kind of a long-winded answer to that a relatively simple question, but shoot, and then I guess it sure helps if you like what you do. because
Yeah,
they're going to be lonely moments, and there are going to be periods within your business where you're not going to be making what you could be. Probably. Obviously, this is just been my experience. I won't try to speak for like entrepreneurs at large, but there are serious trade-offs about working a 9 to 5 or working working for yourself. And I just think that being honest with yourself about those and what is important to you is really important when thinking about leaving that security and going into a world of unknowns.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you're not necessarily going to be at the level of your financial level of your doctor, lawyer, finance friends for a while, but you have that. I always think that the coolest thing about entrepreneurship is potential. You have the ability to build a 7-8+ figure business. Like it's always there. It's just playing the game and figuring out how to get there. And if you can get there and you can build these systems and processes that Clint and I are always talking about on the show, to where you still maintain flexibility, but your business can still grow, then to me, that you're winning the game then, I mean, that might not be winning for everybody, but it sure would feel like it to me for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I know that I am very fortunate in that my wife has a very stable 9 to 5. Yeah. And that makes things a lot easier on our household, because when one person
helps, yeah.
You're right. If mine dips, she basically encourages me to keep on taking these swings for keep swinging for the fences, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so shout out to Claire.
Good job, Claire.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if we were both entrepreneurs, I think it would actually be really hard. It'd be a lot harder. Yeah.
It's a team effort. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Well, guys, I think that's a wrap for this episode. I think that's a perfect way to end it. But from the both of us, Grant, we want to thank you for taking the time into your day and joining us and adding value to what we're doing on our podcast.
Oh, likewise. I appreciate you guys having me, giving me a platform to talk about Rickaroons and Mkrday. And I mean, talking to other entrepreneurs, I feel like I could do it all day, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, yeah. This is what we love to do, for sure.
Yeah.
And Grant, it was great to talk to you again today. It was really fun to catch up and see what you're working on. Thank you all so much for listening to That Entrepreneur Life. To learn more about what Grant's working on, check out Rickaroons.com, Mkrday.com, and his podcast, Small Biz Gone Viral.com. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe to our podcast, and don't forget to download our free ebook about the success mindset at thatentrepreneurlife.com. And don't forget to share with your friends and family as well.
Yeah, man. Just like Andrew just said, share. Thanks for continuing to support what we do as entrepreneurs. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode of That Entrepreneur Life.
Thanks for listening to That Entrepreneur Life podcast. Be sure to visit thatentrepreneurlife.com to join the conversation, access our show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode as we continue to add value. Until next time.